Good morning, Ryan. Super excited to show you the demo that we created for Laserfiche workflow integrated with Payflow Pro via email. Okay, so what you're looking at here to explain the demo that I'm going to show you is a Laserfiche workflow that is going to invoke the payment process. It's going to call a service here on Velosimo, which is going to trigger an email to get sent to the payer. All of the information about who to send it to is going to come through the call. The payer will receive an email. They'll go in, pay for the payment in Payflow Pro. Payment will be received into Velosimo, and a receiving workflow will be triggered. So run payment received workflow will be triggered. So really excited to show you this. I'm going to jump in and start the demo. So let me go. I am using Laserfiche Forms as the front end. It does not have to be part of the equation as we talked. So a little bit different. I know you guys are using Laserfiche Forms, so perfect. But this is so 7 days, $140 submitting this. Okay, this is now submitting into Laserfiche Forms and running a workflow. Give it just a second. I'm going to be receiving an email. It's got it. Just received an email that I have payment due for my garage sale permit application for $140, due date, information, so on. Click pay. Land on the Payflow Pro page, $140 due, and enter the credit card information. And click pay. Completed. Okay, now as the payer, as the applicant, I have now completed, finished. But what's happening behind the scenes is I just received another email, which I'm going to open up, that payment was received. Much uglier email, but this was sent to me from Laserfiche Workflow. Okay, so from a Laserfiche Workflow, payment received, information, it's approved, so on. All right, now I'm going to dive in and show you how this works behind the scenes. Okay, so as I mentioned, I have a here within inside of Laserfiche Forms the send to workflow for payment. So I've created a workflow on the our workflow server named send to Velosimo. Okay, so I'm going to now jump over to our workflow server. So within the workflow, and again, you were mentioning you guys do a bunch of things. So at some point in the workflow, you'll make an HTTP post call, just to open this up a bit, goes to Velosimo, to a specific URL, and you send in a number of parameters. So we'll have a reference ID, an amount, the method, and email. There are several of these that are required, and then others that are optional. For example, you can see the applicant, the full name, the application, the due date. Those are all variables that are showing up on the email, right? So here, if you look at this email template, this is a variable that's coming from there. This is a variable coming from there. This is a variable coming from there, as well as obviously the amount. So we can support, this is a template. So obviously, you can customize this, but you can send essentially any data that you would like from the Laserfiche workflow, have it made available on the email. So, kind of sky's the limit that way. There are just a couple that are required. So the requireds are going to be the reference ID, the amount, we need method, email, and then obviously an email. And then so, whatever else the template needs. But from there, that's what triggers the email to run. Very straightforward. And then you'll have a receiving workflow. This is configurable. So what I've done here is that we will call, so Velosimo will call a workflow. Here is the workflow. We're expecting to send in a number of parameters. Okay, so this is the callback. And just to explain, so I'm showing one, the first one, the send to was this. Now I'm going to show what happens on payment received. Okay, so on payment received, we'll run payment received. We're going to call a receiving workflow. Okay, so here is that receiving workflow. the requirements right now, and really open to discuss this, we're passing in the reference ID, the transaction ID, and the transaction status. So you'll get those three sent to you right into the workflow. And then at that point, what I've done is you can also make another HTTP post call out to Velosimo, and you can get the detailed information. So if you look at how this call would be set up, it's basically calling out and getting the detailed information based on the reference ID and returning that back. Okay. So, and then from there, there's the email. So when you look at the rough email I received right here, that's from all of this happening. So these are the three variables that were passed into the receiving workflow. This is the response from calling Velosimo for more detail. So if you have a reason to leverage any of this other additional information that's coming back from Payflow Pro, you can do that there. And just to show, there's my receiving email. Oops, it's like I duplicated some things, but you're able to see that. Let me close that. Let me open it again. Right? So form post content, so on and so forth. Very straightforward. I think that gives you a lot. This is very configurable. The other nice thing is that in Velosimo, all of the transactions run here. So this is an interface. We talk about having a tenant. You have a tenant for this. It runs. You can see when I just refresh that, there were some email messages that were sent. I can see the workflow that was executed. So this is the actual API call to run the workflow. So I can see here there was a post to our workflow server. Here's the name of the workflow that was executed. Everything's configurable, but a little bit of a look at the interface. So all of the transactions that are happening, where things are running, they're happening. So, but yeah, would love to talk with you all a bit more about how to move on and get this set up. If you get over here into now the Payflow Manager interface, I'm going to refresh. We should see those transactions from the last transaction we just executed. So there it is for the $140 and all so on and so forth.